Welcome to the Lore Tours of Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2951. This is where I walk the floor of IAE and tell you all about the history of the ships on display and their creators. Now join me on the floor for your tour. We're here on the floor with Alien Day, the alien manufacturers and some human manufacturers that produce alien-like ships. So, who are these alien manufacturers? What do they make? Why do they make things? Well, let's get started with talking about some of the Xi'an, a little bit of the Bennu, and then, of course, the human recreation of these ships. We've got, with the Xi'an, we have two manufacturers which are on the floor here today. Gatak, I don't know how to spell it. My Bennu is terrible. My Xi'an is terrible too. Gatak and Aopoa. And both of these ship manufacturers have been around a very long time. We know that Gatak has been around for over 22,000 years, founded around 19,747 BC, human time. It's been around for a very long time, and to understand both of these manufacturers, we have to understand a little bit about Xi'an life. So the Xi'an society is very structured, very rigid. They have the great houses, who control most of the empire, with the emperor at the very top, who kind of orders all of the great houses. Each great house is responsible for a specific major manufacturing or major role in the Xi'an empire, with minor houses funneling resources to that major house to produce its goods. So, for instance, there might be a clothing manufacturer who makes clothing, but they need, the fabrics, and the fabrics need to be, grown in a field. So you have minor houses that will gather those resources, produce the linen or the cloth, and then give it to the clothing manufacturer to, house to actually produce it. So you can think of each great house as also being its own company, its own business, and they get these roles because the emperor gives them the actual end, like the essentially the right to be the manufacturer. And every so often, if a house falls out of favor with the imperial house, then it'll be swapped with another great house, or taking a minor house and making it a great house, and so on and so forth. So you have to understand that Gatak and Apoa are both actual major houses. Gatak actually is a major house that deals with industrial vehicles for the Xi'an, whereas the Apoa does light vehicles, light and military vehicles. So, a little bit about the Gatak. It's has the exclusive right to produce products for the to manufacture the industrial right forever, because it was a close ally with the current imperial house, and they've been given the forever right to hold to be able to be the manufacturer of these industrial ships. They've been given that for eternity because of their service to the empire and service to the imperial house during the Great Divide. And they've grown close with several other emperors over the time. Whereas Apoa is a new and up and coming youngster. They essentially a bid came out to become the great house involved with light fighter technology. They produced not a very good fighter, but they put the Imperial seal on their fighters, and no one dared to attack a ship with the Imperial seal while the Emperor was watching the whole trials. So they ended up kind of winning by default. And after that sort of sleight of hand trickery, they went on to develop a brand new revolutionary engine technology, which has become the basis for most Xi'an ships, allowing for multi-directional thrust with main engines rather than having to deal with a main engine and maneuvering thrusters. Both of these companies have become involved in the humans as well, with either Gatak or Apoa working with Misk to kind of a technological trade. Probably Gatak, because Gatak does industrial stuff. But both of them do sell products to humanity, which is why they're here at IAE. Then you've got the Bennu. Now, the Bennu do not have such a rigid structure. They have what's called the Suli. I'm not going to go too in depth with the Suli, but know that it's kind of like a family and a trade guild. And because Sulis are based around an Esso Suli, the head of the Suli, when that Esso Suli dies, the Sulis break up and they have to reform under a new Suli or new Esso Suli, or they just go their own separate ways and form their own Sulis or join other Sulis over time. And because, I think the average life expectancy of the Bennu is about 30 years, they're very short-lived and very chaotic sort of society. So when you see things like the Defender and the Bennu Merchantman, know that they're built by manufacturers, but not necessarily one single manufacturer. There may be hundreds, thousands of Bennu Suli who produce these ships that when they're negotiating with non-Bennu, they kind of form together for a collective bargaining agreement, essentially with humans. And so that's because they're still kind of getting used to the idea of other societies and how they function, though they're adapting. And lastly, we're going to talk about Asperia, founded in 2873 by some enthusiasts, some aerospace enthusiasts. It is become historical aerospace enthusiasts. It was founded with the idea of retrieving and restoring old spacecraft, human spacecraft, stuff that had been missing for hundreds or thousands of years, or kind of like those people who take old World War II fighter planes and World War I fighter planes and then kind of restore them back to their original state. That's what they were dedicated to doing. And over time, Asperia became very good at working with alien technology, being responsible for reverse engineering a bunch of Vanduul fighters over time as well. And since then, they've become almost exclusively in alien manufacturing. If we ever to see something like the RSI Zeus being purchasable in-game, it'll probably be through Asperia, though. But they essentially take civilizations which no longer exist or are hostile to humanity. So the Tavaran and the Vanduul, they take their ships and then kind of recreate them for the human market with as authentic as possible. And they've done fairly well for themselves, growing steadily over time, especially since they were granted exclusive rights to a cache of Tavaran ships that were found on the planet of, or in the system of Cabal, where a lost Tavaran colony was discovered that had been abandoned sometime after the First Tavaran War. They even worked with Tavaran scientists and archaeologists and social, like experts to try to be as authentic as possible. So they got a lot of kudos from the remaining Tavaran peoples for their rigorous dedication to bringing these ships back to life effectively. So let's talk about these ships. Let's go start with the Defender. Banu. Bang bang. Such is the original commercial for the Banu Defender. This is, like all Bennu ships, designed to be the best of all worlds. The Bennu are they're obsessed with not necessarily uniqueness, but they're obsessed with the best. Exotic, foreign things, shiny things are good, but also the best things are good too. And, since the Bennu don't live very long, there's no reason to sit down and do a ton of R&D on something that could not be better. So why develop when you can just take from other better technologies? So the Bennu Defender is a combat ship that's designed as an escort ship for mercenaries to protect things like the Banu Merchantman or whatever. And it comes with a variety of material, of components, which are not Bennu made, which are made by humanity or the Tavaran or the Xi'an, to kind of improve its abilities. But the Defender, we don't know, because the Bennu don't keep history, we don't know how long the Defender has been around, but it's probably been around as long as humanity has known the Tavaran. Not the Tavaran, the Bennu. As long as the humanity has known the Bennu. Possibly longer, because, again, they don't keep records. But every so often they update the design and update the material inside with the best and possible, the best of the best possible loadouts that they can, because why not? All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the Asperia ships a little bit here, and then we'll kind of finish it off with the Apoa. This is the Vanduul Blade, I believe, which is the light fighter that was created for the Vanduul. This is based off of captured blade materials and partial ships. They were able to kind of recreate the whole thing. You'll notice there's a lot of blades, a lot of pointy edges on this ship, because of course the Vanduul love to do close quarters combat. Melee combat in space is their big thing. Getting up close with to your enemy and attacking them physically is a thing of great honor, and surviving is a great honor. It shows that you're the strong warrior in Vanduul culture. So the Blade is given to kind of rookie pilots who are just starting out in the Vanduul clans, and if they can survive, they'll eventually work their way up to the Scythe and eventually the Glaive, and possibly even higher as they go through. So these are light fighters, often used as scouts, and definitely used during a lot of raids. This has been kind of retrofitted back to allow for humans to fly them. I'm going to save you for last. We'll save you for last. Let's use second. This is the Glaive. Now, the Glaive is a upgraded heavy fighter version of the Scythe. As you can see here, symmetrical version of the Scythe, generally flown by Vanduul with more combat experience. They're better armed and have two large blades and wings to operate in the standard Scythe. Like I said, obsession with blades. These are specifically designed as ramming blades. Vanduul ace pilots are the ones who tend to get these glaives. But otherwise, it's just kind of upgraded version of a more symmetrical Scythe. Now, this is where we start getting into a little bit more of the interesting history, because we actually know a lot of this history. These are the Talon and the Talon Shrike. I believe this is just the regular Talon, might be the Shrike. Yeah, this is the regular Talon. So the Talon is quite an infamous ship. It was built before the First Tevaran War and was used exceptionally well during the First Tevaran War. Talons would operate in large squadrons that would then strike at a target and run away. They were hit-and-run ships, and they would sometimes dogfight, but they're most often seen and heard attacking ground targets because they have a distinctive whine when they dive, or at least they did. They had a distinctive whine when they dived onto a target, and it serves as kind of a psychological attack as much as it was an actual attack. But the key with these was hit and run away. Just lightning fast strikes that then you would disappear off into the sunset before even the fastest fighters could catch you. And because they were so light and they had shields, unlike light human ships, they were they could outfly most human medium and heavy fighters just easily. And they became very infamous for that. Eventually, things like the Gladius would be built specifically to counter the Talon and kind of like mimic a lot of its aspects. Now, after the First Tevaran War, with the defeat of the Tevaran, much of the Tevaran technology kind of had to get changed. Humans took a lot of the information, a lot of technology from the Tevaran, including like shield tech, and incorporated it on their own ships. But the Tevaran themselves went into exile, and thanks to a very charismatic leader named Korthal, who kind of reforged the Tevaran people into a single group again through religious fervor. He was a zealot, and this was essentially a crusade, a holy war. The second Tevaran would lead to the Second Tevaran War. But there was definitely some changes. The Talon was still fighting But because the Tavaran knew that humans had been capturing their technology and reverse engineering it, they needed ways to get around it. So what came out during the Second Tavaran War was things like the Phalanx Shield, but most specifically, the Shrike. Now, the Shrike variant of the Talon is a missile boat designed to overwhelm shields and just kind of alpha strike with shields, take down your target, especially in large groups, and get out. And again, attacking ground targets was very effective, and more protected ships on the ground or more protected humans who were a little bit more wary of how this technology works would then be caught unawares when they get hit with a missile barrage. So the Shrike, even though the Shrike wasn't captured, this is they kind of modified it to what they think the Second Tavaran War, based off of accounts, was like. Now, the important thing about these Talons, and we'll talk about the Prowler here in a moment, and the Prowler, is that these ships only exist because, as I mentioned, human explorers discovered there was a planet in the Cabal system that was an abandoned Tavaran colony, which is very important to note because up until that point, humanity didn't think that Tavarans had left their system. They didn't have terraforming technology, so they required a very specific kind of environment, which didn't exist around them. So the fact that the Cabal system had a livable Earth-like environment that they could live in was impressive. On top of that, there's no jump point between the Tavaran system of Elysium and Cabal. There is one that you have to go through through another system known as Lear, which we'll talk about eventually, because it is Space Arrakis and Space Australia rolled into one, but and Space Utah all rolled into one. It's the Lear system also has habitable planets. I don't think it required much terraforming. It may have been a little bit. So it'd be weird that they went through 2 jump points and found this system. But when humanity found it, it had an abandoned, fully developed Tavaran colony, which included several intact Talons and Prowlers, which were then used as the basis for, essentially bringing these ships back to life and bringing them up to modern standards through the painstaking work of Vesperia's scientists and engineers. So, speaking of speak of the devil, the Prowler. Now, this is a stealth dropship. The Prowlers were known as, they were the bane of any capital ship during the First and Second Tavaran War. The Prowlers exclusively carried elite shock troops that would be brought into a combat zone and dropped off. These were the best of Tavaran soldiers, Tavaran warriors. And the favorite maneuver of the Prowler was to secretly sneak up on a lone patrol ship or capital ship and attach itself to the hull and disgorge its troops, who would then board the vessel and kill everyone slowly and silently, very painstakingly taking over the ship. And it was absolutely frightening to anyone who served on a capital ship during the First Tavaran War. We have accounts of the fear of being boarded by a Prowler. And since then, the Prowler has become a staple of the UEE, of the Marines. The Marines have taken the Prowler and use it as a modified version of the Prowler, thanks to Vesperia, and use it as a stealth dropship for their own operations. So this ship was fully indoctrinated into the UEE military after, I think, the Second Tavaran War, though it does still exist for the civilian market through Vesperia as well. I think you can carry up to like 20 drop troops as well. It's an insane number of seats. 6 plus, I think, 2 more in the front. So yeah, it's 10 plus, I think, 2 more in the back right there. Yeah, so like my math is off. Brain no work. Like 13. Let me count. 4 and 4 is 8, plus 4, 16? I guess, yeah, 16. Math. Before anyone says anything in the comments, I'm a history teacher, all right? Math isn't that required. Apoa. Let's talk about Apoa. So we talked a little bit about their Poa, but this is the Kar2-All. Now, it's important to note that the Kar2-All is not the military variant. There is a military variant of the Kar2-All called the Huihir Kar2, I think. Huihir Kar2. My GM is absolutely horrible. Jail's in the comments shaking his head, being like, Paul, don't even try. But it's... that is the military variant of this ship. This ship is the civilian variant. And it's actually one of the first Xi'an ships sold on the human market. This was modified specifically for human use, and it's done pretty well because of what has become known as the Human Xi'an Trade Agreement, or HUXA, has opened up trade between humanity and Xi'an more, and we're starting to see a lot more Xi'an material coming in from their empire to being sold in the UAE. So yeah, it's Kar2-All. So it's a light scout vessel designed for reconnaissance and fighting, kind of a light fighter. Now let's go talk about the other ships, which we don't quite see on the floor, and a couple of ground vehicles, or I think one ground vehicle. All right, here we go. The Nox. So the Nox is a type of, I guess, racing ship. It's a hover bike similar to the Drake Dragonfly or the X1, built by the Xi'an, but it's built for speed. It does have some weapon capabilities on it, but it is mostly built for pure straight line speed. I don't know how maneuverable these Noxes are. But yeah, they're these are racing bikes sold by Apoa using the same kind of technology. Let's see what the little blurb says. Yeah, 2947. Available for first time in human space. The Nox has been redesigned for human pilots ready to race. Yeah, it's a racer that has some guns on it, essentially, built from ground up. Now, I do believe there's some Noxes that are present in the Xi'an military, used as scout bikes. So you may also see these in a more military capacity as well. Nothing over there, right? Yeah. All right. Let's go to the display hall. Right here we have the Bennu merchantman. Let my bias come through. So this is actually wrong. Someone's pointed this out. It says it's passed down from generation to generation Bennu. That was the correct. That was the case before they kind of redesigned the Bennu to not really have generations. So this was originally a generational ship. It may end up being something like that in the sense that, a Suli, a new SO Suli might claim ownership of a Bennu merchantman that was owned by the Suli before them. And so it's kind of passed down from generation to generation. But a Bennu merchantman is probably one of the oldest vessels that the Bennu have ever created. Possibly some of the oldest vessels in history that still operate. Just like any other Bennu ship, they take elements from any of the species they meet that they think is good, and they add it to their own designs, components, design styles, whatever. But the merchantman is the backbone of the Bennu economy. It's defense, everything. It's a kind of a jack of all trades ship designed for trade, hauling, combat, probably search and rescue even. It's designed to be very flexible in its role. And as a result, it has lots of guns, it has lots of space, it has very traditional Bennu trading locations. It kind of has it all. It even has its own fighter bay for a defender, now at least. So these have been around for a very long time in Bennu history. Again, possibly since the beginning of Bennu spaceflight. But we don't know because they don't keep records. But people have asked as well, like, hey, does the Bennu merchantman, does it make sense that humans would have access to the Bennu merchantman? And the reality is, yeah. The Bennu sell pretty much anything they can to humanity, and they love to. And if there's a market for something, then that humans will buy, Bennu will make it for humans. In fact, a lot of the Banu merchantmen that we're going to be getting in game is going to be modified for humans, because there are certain things that humans do that Bennu don't need to do. So they had to kind of modify and add some things for human comfort. So yeah, it does make sense that these would be pretty prolific in the UEE, just because of their abilities and because of the willingness of the Bennu to go beyond just being traders, but beyond by trading their wares everywhere, but also to trade their ships. And last but not least, the Rylan. This is Gatak's medium freight vessel. There are probably heavy and light freight vessels as well, as well possibly even mining and salvage ships. But this is interesting because it seems very similar to like the Hull series. And we know that the Xi'an actually used the Hull series, or at least in lore they have mentioned that they used the Hull series for their own transportation purposes. So the Rylan seems to be very kind of like right up that alley, the same kind of like, hey, let's use design elements that we like from human spaceships and add it to our own. So most of the cargo is exterior, with the interior being a very luxurious sort of living space, as well as access to components and such. But just like the Bennu, they have made accommodations for human crew so that they could sell this to humanity as well. So these ships are mostly used as kind of like, you could see them as sort of like the Taurus or the Freelancer Maxes of the Xi'an. They are designed for the medium hull needs, hauling things around from place to place, which is, it's an important distinction to make, that the Xi'an are so specialized not only in their houses, but in their planets. A planet has a specific designation, and it only does that one thing. So, like a factory planet builds possibly, like there may be a planet in Xi'an space that only builds Raylans. Probably not only Raylans, but it's probably like a factory that's owned by Gatak that makes all of their ships. And it's the entire planet. The closest the humans have something to this is ArcCorp. Xi'an have actually been to ArcCorp and said, yeah, this is the closest y'all have to our factory worlds. But they also have like military worlds, they have religious worlds, they have agro worlds. So they have worlds that are like dedicated to one sole production or one sole thing, rather than kind of diversifying. So because of that, you may have planets that are just factories that have no food production. Thus, you need a very extensive logistics network to ship in all of the food that your people need from the agro worlds to the factory planets. So Rylan is not just, or the Rylan and Gatak isn't just important, it's the lifeblood of the Xi'an Empire. So that's the reason why, possibly why you see the interiors of the Rylan being so luxurious, because being a trader is kind of like being a hero. You are literally an essential worker for the Xi'an Empire. And the Xi'an, yeah, they do kind of they don't skimp on those sorts of things. They do like to make sure people feel welcome about that, especially if they feel like they're important. Yeah, so it's slim offerings for Aliens Day, but it's pretty cool. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Are you excited about any of these ships? Are any of these ships your favorite? Are you waiting for it? Do you want to know more about any of these ships individually? I haven't done a thing on any of these for historical purposes, for Galactic Historian. So let me know. Would you want to see a Apoa or Gatak or Asperia standalone video? Let me know in the comments below. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you enjoyed this content. I'll be doing this every day for all of the events. And remember, Ex Historia ad Astra.